Today's Tan Talk.
It's time for FLA Law, brought to you by the personal injury attorneys of Perenich, Caulfield, Avril Noyes. This hour will be informative, along with taking your questions and comments. Now, here are your hosts for today's show.
Good evening. It is Tuesday at 5 o'clock, and that means we are here for another edition of FLA Law on the radio. My name is Matthew Noyes. I'm one of the partners at the law firm of Perenich, Caulfield, Avril Noyes, a personal injury law firm here in Tampa Bay that has been serving Tampa Bay's injured since 1955. We are the oldest personal injury law firm in Tampa Bay, and we have been around so long because we really take pride in giving back to the community. And this show is just one opportunity to do just that, is to be available for you on a live call-in radio show to answer questions that you may have regarding the law. We do personal injury. That means car accidents, trip and falls, and other types of personal injuries. We also do workers' compensation and Social Security disability. So we can tackle any of those areas of law as well. We will be having a special guest calling in. That's attorney Michelle Perez. She is a regular for our show. She's always here to answer questions that you have regarding immigration law, a hot topic in the news right now. And so Michelle will be here to answer questions that you have. But I'm not here alone. I have my friend and my law partner, Lori Robinson, here as well. Lori, thank you for coming.
Always good to be here. When you said it was Tuesday, I was thinking, is this Margaritaville maybe? Not quite,
I wish
right?
it was Margaritaville. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. In fact, as the regular listeners know, I came back from Margaritaville last week, and you were away.
I was.
You were in France. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about that little trip in a nutshell?
Sure. It was a really extraordinary experience. Spent a couple of weeks with a group from church, basically on a religious pilgrimage, and we went all the way from Lourdes in the south of France, which is in the Pyrenees Mountains near Spain, all the way out through the center of France and then to Paris. Never had the experience before. It was absolutely beautiful, and it was just a very enriching experience.
Well, and the photos were wonderful. So if you want to see some really cool photos, jump on Lori's Facebook page and check out those photos. It's really good. But if you have questions regarding the law, give us a call at 727-441-3000, or you can jump on the firm's Facebook page after you check out Lori's photos. And the firm's Facebook page is Perenich, Caulfield, Avril Noyes Injury Lawyers. And we are live feeding the show, so you can see Lori and myself here in the studio. And you can type in your questions right on the comments, and we'll be able to address those questions that you have. But so this is the time to do it. Again, if you have immigration questions, Michelle Perez will be available in just a little bit to be able to answer those questions as well. But we are getting close to Thanksgiving.
Yes.
And Thanksgiving is a wonderful time, one of my favorite holidays of the year. But it's also a lot of traveling, a lot of people on the roads. Lori, what tips do you give those people driving to prevent accidents and to make sure that they're safe while driving?
I think, aren't they predicting this to be one of the largest travel? It always is one of the largest travel holidays, but I think even more so this year.
I think so.
And there are probably a lot of people here in our local area that will be traveling just to try to add a little bit of extra enjoyment, since we've had kind of a tough fall with our storms. But the main thing, obviously, you really always have to be paying attention. But the main thing is to be looking out for other drivers who, in these kind of times, probably traveling with their children often, very easy to be distracted. And you kind of have to be looking ahead to anticipate those kinds of things.
Right. I think it's very important. We have a beautiful scenery, and people are coming down maybe from the north.
Right.
And they're enjoying the palm trees and the water on both sides of the bridges. But they don't always put 100% focus on the road. So it's important that we watch out for those people.
Obviously, that's such a good point here. particularly as things open back up on the beach. I was excited to see on Facebook that Frenchie's is open. So many of the establishments are getting back up and running, thank goodness. But with that means a lot of people that may not be familiar with the area that are just visiting. So you really have to be mindful of that.
Yeah, and everyone tells them, hey, don't drive during the afternoon, drive at night or drive early in the morning, but you run the risk of drowsy driving as well. And drowsy driving can be very dangerous. You are impaired if you're drowsy.
Sure, because people are trying to make it maybe without having to stop along the way.
Right.
Now, I can't help but add this one little tip. So we have our roundabout that going out of the beach, which we all complain about. In Paris, they have something called I think it's called the Etui. My French never really got very good, but they literally have no lanes on this thing. And it's around the Arc de Triomphe, and people, it's just like every man for themselves. It was unbelievable. So
our roundabout's not as bad as we think.
No, actually, ours is a piece of cake, but mostly because it has a little bit more order. But the main thing is, everybody's excited. We're all a little bit distracted during the holiday time. So we just need to be extra careful to try to stay focused so that we can continue, so that we get to enjoy it, obviously, and hopefully don't have any accidents.
Sure. Yeah. And then Black Friday is also a wonderful event, but that also results in a lot of parking lot accidents. Mm-hmm. And a few things that we have found out throughout the years is that the police don't have to come to parking lot accidents. We would think that they would have to, but in reality, they don't have to come to parking lot accidents. So it's even more important that if the police won't come out in a parking lot accident, that you take steps to protect your claim. And a few ways to protect a claim is to make sure you take photographs.
Yes, absolutely.
And what kind of photographs should they be taken? Of what?
Well, of the vehicles and the damage. And unfortunately, people would be surprised to realize you can have a pretty significant accident in a parking lot.
Oh, yes.
I think of one of a dear friend. He was literally waiting on his wife. She went into the grocery. Yeah. And a car lady got confused, and she hit the gas thinking she was hitting the brake, and she went right up over the curb, at a parking, she was in a space, and right over the front of his car.
Wow.
Now you can't really do much about that, basically. But
a lot of times, I think it's also very important that they take photos of where the cars were at.
Yes.
Because we're having a dispute right now. One of our cases, our client was pulled all the way out of his parking spot when somebody on the other side of the aisle backed into him. And so the insurance company is trying to say, well, they were both backing out at the same time, when in reality, our guy was already out.
Right. So it would have been helpful to preserve that location.
Right. Well, we do have our special guest on the line, Michelle Perez. How are you doing today?
Good.
We're doing good.
Yes, very nice to hear you.
So Lori's right here too. Yeah. It's not just you and me, Michelle.
How nice. I like the group study.
That's right. Why don't you tell our listeners where you're at, Michelle?
I'm actually in South Florida with my in-laws for Thanksgiving break.
That's wonderful. Well, we thank you for taking a break from your Thanksgiving break to come and help educate our listeners about immigration law. I know you're a regular here, Michelle, which I appreciate. But why don't you tell our new listeners a little bit about you and your practice and why you started out in immigration law?
Sure. My name is Michelle Perez. I've been an attorney now for 9 years. I specifically do immigration law, and I've been doing it for the past 13 years. And I help clients, undocumented clients who are in the United States, more specifically get papers, visas, or if they're in process of deportation, I help them with that, with court proceedings. So we started our firm back in February. It's Saavedra and Perez Law, and we are based in Virginia, and we also have like a co-working space in Clearwater, and I live in Clearwater, but we're a virtual firm, so we're the new age kind of firm.
And you can be all across the country too, because immigration's national law, right? Federal law.
Right. So most of our clients are, I mean, I have a few in Clearwater, but we have a lot in like New York, North Carolina, we have Texas, Arizona. And I'm able to just show up to court via video, and I don't have to travel all the way to Arizona or Texas.
That's
So
wonderful.
it's good. Mm-hmm.
And your clients can get in contact you either by Zoom or by telephone or other technological ways, right?
Right. We have Zoom, we have telephone. We do a lot of in-person if you're like in the locations like Clearwater or Fairfax, Virginia. We do in-person consults. But other than that, yeah, we use phone and Zoom.
Yes, that's very good. And so our listeners today, Michelle is here taking time out of her Thanksgiving break to be available to answer questions you have regarding immigration law. It is a hot topic right now. And so if you have questions, Michelle's here. She's a pro at it now. She's been she's educated me a whole bunch as a guest on our show. So please, if you have questions, give us a call at 727-441-3000. But one thing, Michelle, that I wanted really to have you talk about is that although this isn't a political talk show or anything like that, there is concern about the what may happen to the undocumented people that are here in the United States. What recommendation do you give at this point to anybody who is trying to get lawful status? And if you can explain what the lawful status really is as well.
Yeah, so lawful status just means that you have permission to remain in the United States, whether it be under a temporary status or a full permanent residency. And I really encourage people, especially after Trump has won, he's already starting to make a wave in the immigration field. And so are, the departments like ICE and USCIS and DHS, they're starting to switch up gears in kind of getting ready for Trump because they know how he operates, because he's done it before. And so what I really tell people is to now, before he fully takes office, to speak with an immigration attorney, to get a consultation, because you never know what options you have until you ask. I've had so many consults where clients are surprised that I'm able to offer them some sort of relief, or there is some sort of path to residency, and they never knew because they were too afraid to consult with an attorney. So what I really tell the public who hasn't yet had a consult, to please call us. We specialize in all the types of deportation proceedings and all the possible visas that you can get, especially the ones that are a little bit more complicated and humanitarian based on victims. Not all attorneys do it because it's very complicated, but we've been able to help hundreds of clients just based on humanitarian visas that a lot of attorneys do not touch because of the complexity of it. So we almost, I don't want to say specialize in it, but we have probably about 50% of our cases are humanitarian-based visas. And a lot of people don't understand that they could be eligible for this type of visa just because of something that's happened in the United States, and it might have been something that happened like 15 years ago, that maybe they don't realize that they were actually a victim of trafficking or abuse.
And I know from our past shows that there's all types of different hardship visas. Different situations can make an undocumented person have temporary status here. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what type of situations would make them qualified for temporary legal status?
Yeah. The big one that we do at my firm is T visas, which are victims of trafficking incidents. And so when people think trafficking, they think, human trafficking or sex trafficking. Like, yes, that could be trafficking. But there's forms of trafficking. Trafficking also includes It just includes working involuntarily for someone or in corporation. So usually what we have is like domestic violence situations where we can file a T visa based on the abuse that someone has suffered with a partner. They don't have to have been married to that partner. We just have to show certain, legal requirements to show that there was control and manipulation and a trafficking event. Just basically the big trafficking event for domestic violence is like the control and making them clean and cook in the house and having like almost them work for free in a sense, or maybe taking their money after being paid for a job outside and having that financial control. So that's a big one. And
yeah,
also,
I heard that on the news that a lot of quote unquote sponsors are saying, "Hey, come on over, we'll sponsor you. You just have to pay us back," and then they never end up being able to pay them back, and they just keep working for that person indefinitely. Right. And I think it's a T visa. Is that what you said, right?
Yeah. We call that situation the Cinderella story. Where they come over with promises, and it could be a sponsor or even a family member pays for their trip over, and then they get severely mistreated and abused, and having to work for this person for free, and it just never ends.
Yes, and unfortunately, we do see a lot in the news about the criminals that come over, but we don't get to hear enough about the people that may think that they are coming for a better life, and then get in situations that they're afraid to contact an attorney. And as you already said, they should not be afraid to contact an attorney. For one thing, all conversations that you have with an attorney is attorney-client privilege, right, Lori?
Yes, right. And that's something probably the average person wouldn't necessarily understand, especially in these areas where they would be very fearful, understandably so. But that it's very important to understand that would be completely confidential. You could totally tell Michelle the whole situation, and you might find out that there's some help that you wouldn't have been aware of otherwise.
Right. I mean, because if they don't take the steps to get temporary legal status, what risk are they taking? What can happen? Michelle?
Well, they can be placed into deportation proceedings. So if they're stopped by a police officer and maybe they're arrested for driving without a license, once you get arrested, they have the ability to contact ICE based on not showing that you're documented or you have if you have permission to stay here. And so once ICE gets involved, the police has the right, like county police and state police have the right to detain someone for 48 hours before ICE can pick them up. And so ICE has the ability to come pick somebody up and transfer them to immigration detention, where they'll have to deal with deportation proceedings and being in front of a judge. And so it gets a little bit harder when you're detained. And we don't know what's going to happen in Trump, but there can be a lot of bond denials happening in 2025. And so it'll make it difficult for somebody to apply for maybe a T visa if they're detained.
But if they've already applied for the T visa and it's just going through the process, would that provide them protection?
Yes, it will. It will. Even if they get stopped by the police and maybe they can show them that they have a pending T visa or pending residency application pending, then they'll be less likely to detain them based on driving without a license. They might still call ICE, and ICE might still come and detain them, but worst thing is that we can show the immigration judge that they have a release pending, and they would more likely release them on bond, and we'll go through the proceedings and kind of wait for the decision for the T visa, and then show the judge and just close their case, basically.
And I can imagine you're probably very busy right now because there's probably a lot of undocumented immigrants wanting to start that process. But can you explain to our listeners what that process is? I mean, from the time that they come and meet with you, what do you have to do? What do they have to do? And how long of a process is that?
Yeah. So the first step is figuring out what you're eligible for. And sometimes clients may be eligible for multiple options, and just depending on, their history, and I can make recommendations on what they should aim on applying for. And once they sign up with us, we start a very extensive questionnaire with them to gather a lot of information and documents so we can put the package together and put our arguments together. We submit that, and then depending on what type of application it will be pending with USCIS. For a T visa, it takes approximately 18 months for adjudication. For something like a U visa, those are actually taking 8 to 10 years.
Wow.
But yeah, it's hard.
What type of visa is that?
U visas are victims of crime. So if you've been a victim of a violent crime and you've reported it to the police and you've helped in the prosecution of it, you're able to get a U visa depending on the location.
Okay.
Those are taking a lot longer, but while you have that pending, you can get a work permit. So that is, in essence, permission to stay and to work in the United States. So it gives the immigrant a little bit more relief that even if they are, it'd be less likely a situation where ICE would arrest them in that situation. And if they do, then they have something to show for it, and the judge will likely release them on bond, and they can just kind of continue court proceedings outside and just wait for the adjudication of whatever visa they have pending.
And that work visa allows them to, I guess, legally work, and also then contribute to federal income taxes, Social Security, and such like that, right?
Yeah. Well, a big myth is that immigrants don't pay taxes, which is actually the complete opposite. They pay more taxes than we do. They have understood how important it is to pay taxes. So the majority of my clients have tax records for 10 plus years. What they do is they get an ITIN number and they pay taxes based on whatever cash or checks that they receive. They pay about 30% of that to the government.
And that's what you recommend, because failure to pay taxes is another reason to be deported, right?
Well, taxes is just a factor in the good moral character aspect of any.
So why don't they take the normal deductions? Why do you recommend that they pay 30%?
They won't be able to have deductions unless they have kids. Then they'll get sort of refund if they were paying in time. But usually, what I see is immigrants paying out taxes, not getting refunds.
Okay. Yeah, so I think that's another opportunity, not just for the undocumented immigrant, but also for society, that they don't feel like they're tied. If they have a work permit, they don't feel like they're so tied to that employer and being held over, or with their thumb over the immigrant's head, so to speak, with so much power, because they have a work permit that they can then go someplace else and work. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of the situation, especially because they get they're abused when the employer knows that they have no papers, so they take advantage of the immigrants. So once you get that work permit, you're legally able to work, and you can find work at the rate that you're supposed to get paid. And at that point, you can be on W-2s, and they can take out your taxes, and you'd be paying less, right? Because your employer would be paying the other 15%.
Okay, that makes sense. So ultimately, they file an application for temporary status. And is the next step the permanent resident card?
Yeah, in most cases, once the visa is approved, after having that visa for 3 years, you're able to apply for permanent residency status as long as you remain having good moral character. So no serious arrests or anything like that.
And that's what other people know as a green card. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's the permanent resident card.
Because it was green at some point, right?
Was it ever green, Michelle?
It was green, and then it came back, and then it left, and It's the green card has just been used.
Okay, and what can somebody that has a green card or permanent residence card do differently than somebody that has a temporary visa be able to do? What rights, so to speak, or what privileges does somebody with a green card have that a temporary visa may not have?
The residents have the right to apply for citizenship after either 3 or 5 years, depending if they're married to a U.S. citizen or not. So the residents can actually become U.S. citizens, whereas like a temporary status, they can never be a citizen from just having temporary status.
Okay, and can they sponsor family members, more types of family members, if they have a green card as opposed to? Well, let me ask you this question first. Can somebody with a temporary visa try to get family members in from another country and sponsor them, or no?
No.
Okay.
They can help in some sponsorship situations, but it would only be like some types of visas that come with work permits. So like DACA is a big one where DACA allows you to become a joint sponsor in most applications, but you can't petition your family member.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, and you're the expert at this, not me by all means, but I watch the news and and we hear that unaccompanied minors are coming to be with their parents that are here undocumented as well. How does that work? Is that the case, for one thing? And then how can an unaccompanied minor be here permissively with undocumented parents?
Yeah, well, those undocumented parents are probably here without knowledge, right? They don't know that they're here.
Okay.
So what happens with an unaccompanied minor is that depending if they were with one parent back at their home country or they were with aunts and uncles, they came in likely to be with their parent, but they could only obtain a certain status called special juvenile visa status if we can show that one or two or both parents abused, neglected, or abandoned them. And we have to show that to the family court where they are located. So if they're in Florida, I would have to show that to the county court system to show them that if the child was abandoned, neglected, or abused by one or both parents. But what happens there is like when that child gets status from a special immigrant juvenile visa and eventually that leads to residency, there is a law where they cannot petition for their parents. So that is the only caveat to that, because they're saying that if you're showing that one or both parents have been abused by that, we're not going to then allow you to petition for that parent later on.
That makes sense, especially since that's how they got status. So,
right.
So you're listening to Michelle Perez. She's an immigration attorney nationwide. I mean, her office is here in Clearwater, but she also has offices in Virginia. But if you have questions now, while she's on the line, she's taking time out of her family time in order to be available to answer questions that you have. So give us a call at 727-441-3000. So, Michelle, I also wanted to, the ultimate goal is to become a U.S. citizen. Isn't that fair to say for most of your clients?
Yeah.
What are the benefits of being a U.S. citizen for someone who's coming from another country?
Well, you're ultimately being protected from being deported, regardless of what might happen in your life. You won't be able to be deported if you're a U.S. citizen. If you're a lawful permanent resident, I've had many, many cases where lawful permanent residents have been placed into deportation proceedings because of maybe criminal history or some health issues. And so you're protected more when you're a U.S. citizen. Also, as a U.S. citizen, you have more benefits to petition for family members to be able to come into the United States.
So yeah, there are benefits, and you can vote.
And you can vote, yes.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
It does look like we do have a caller. Craig is on the line. Craig, thank you for listening and thank you for calling.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. You're very welcome.
How can we help you?
Well, I'm baffled. I'm listening to your show. It's very interesting. It's like everything that I'm hearing is about how these illegal aliens are being hurt and injured, and how she's protecting them. Illegal aliens are being hurt and injured, and how she's protecting them. In fact, you and she are the ones that are causing the injury, because the minute you come over illegally into our country, you're breaking the law, and then she's representing them and trying to protect them, talking about driving with no license. And everything that you've talked about, attorney, is illegal. You're basically preaching breaking the law on every level possible, and you're the one that's causing the child abuse. You're the one that's causing the sexual abuse, because you're the one that's enabling these people to come over illegally, when we have a system that's more generous than all countries in the world together don't allow as many legal immigrants into the country as we do. So it's a big scam. And the last thing you just talked about is you can vote. And when you're always preaching about how, the illegals will never vote, you got it all worked out how you can get these illegals to vote. It's completely wrong. It's the most anti-American thing I've ever heard. And you act like you're so immoral and you're so high ground, and you're not. You're actually the cause of their suffering, in my opinion.
Well, I appreciate your call, and I appreciate your input on that. As I started out, it is a highly debatable topic, and that's why Michelle has volunteered some time to address that. I think, Michelle, you hear that a lot. I mean, in your type of law, I think you do hear those types of opinions about our immigration system. Michelle,
Yeah, and
what do you feel about that?
It's just really a lack of knowledge about the immigrants that come over. And so what we're trying to do is give them a better opportunity over here, where maybe they were abused or prosecuted in their own country, and their own country can't provide the protections that the United States can. And because we have international laws that are able to protect immigrants that come to our country from other countries, that's the rights that they have. And so we're not breaking the laws. We're actually petitioning and enforcing the laws that are there to protect the immigrants of the United States. And this country was built on immigrants. And so we have to remember that first and foremost. And these immigrants help build our countries as well.
Yeah,
I'd like to add just a little something, because my overall viewpoints are personally rather conservative, but something that the gentleman probably wouldn't realize is, from the perspective of a lawyer, and I'm not saying that there might not be lawyers that are actually attempting to, assist people coming to the country, but in Michelle's situation, somebody's here. They may have a particular set of circumstances that do bring into play humanitarian considerations that the law does recognize. And the lawyer's job, and that is, we have a lot of problems in our country, but as bad as our system might be in certain ways with respect to the law, it's still the best in the entire world.
Amen.
Yeah. And so in that situation, when a person comes to you, that has a set of circumstances that the law may provide for, then as a lawyer, it's your duty, and it's Michelle's calling. I mean, I started my career as a public defender for the first decade in West Palm, and I came out of a very conservative environment, but I love the idea of representing people. And what I learned is that although there obviously can be difficult cases and things that might be very challenging, but most times there were people that you could actually understand what their situation was, and that it was perhaps not as serious. And so I'm just saying, obviously we're talking in generalities, and I understand the gentleman's concerns, but the human part of this, whatever one's political viewpoint is that if you have an individual that has circumstances the law recognizes as legitimate to be considered, as a lawyer, it's your duty and your honor to try to help that individual. Now, that's one particular circumstance. The overall circumstances can be addressed in many other ways. And obviously, those are political kinds of and policy kind of considerations. But as a lawyer, I know Michelle feels this way. I sure do. That when you're just dealing with that particular person, and maybe it's the juvenile who is here in a terrible situation. You didn't enable that. You're trying to address it and protect that individual consistent with the laws that are intended to protect people in that circumstance. So interesting, of course,
Yes.
but still very consistent with our American ideals.
It really is. And I mean, America is the best country in the world. And there are some immigrants, speaking on my own personal viewpoints, there are some undocumented immigrants that don't belong in the United States. Those that commit crime shouldn't be here. And the argument's going to be, well, they crossed the country, so they committed a crime by crossing the country. I appreciate that.
It's true.
It's true.
Actually,
I agree 100%
now,
with that.
we might look at it in a different way because it's certainly more understandable, person trying to get a better life. But
right.
Yeah.
And Michelle, you have to face that probably every day, not just the thoughts on the other side, but also, your own clients' thoughts. They're concerned about their status and their rights or their struggle that they have to try to right a wrong, so to speak. They may have committed the wrong. They're trying to right the wrong. Am I speaking out of turn, Michelle?
No, that's definitely correct. And there's barriers if you've come in here illegally or through the border unprotected. There are barriers for sure in place. So it's not like you can just become a citizen from one day to the next. There's certain steps that you have to follow, and you have to be eligible to apply for according to our laws, our U.S. laws. And so there are barriers for someone that may be coming illegally and then getting deported and re-entering. So we have those mechanisms in place so that those people are barred from becoming residents or citizens.
And not everyone who applies for temporary status or even a green card get that status, right?
Right. You have to be eligible, and all immigration applications are discretionary, meaning even if you're eligible for this type of relief, immigration can say on a discretionary basis that they're going to deny your form, and they have all the right to do that.
That makes sense. So, Michelle, I'll keep you just for probably one more question. I know your kids are probably wanting to say, "Mom, you're not supposed to be working." But I mean, people are concerned. I mean, on both sides of the issue, the undocumented immigrants are concerned, and the people that feel that none of them should be here are also concerned. You are a very reasonable person. I've known you for a long time. Heck, I've known you since you were a receptionist at our office before you became an attorney.
Right.
So I know you for a long time, and you're very
one of our best.
Yes.
Thank you.
If you could stand on a soapbox, I mean, what would you tell both sides?
That's a hard one. I think for those that are opposed to immigrants, it's a reminder that this country was built by immigrants, and that understanding a person's perspective as to why they came into the country in the first place, it can give us like more of a humanity understanding of what people go through outside. We're very blessed in America, and a lot of people have problems just trying to get food, not because they don't have money, but because the supermarket is empty.
Right.
And it's like people that maybe have never been outside the United States that don't understand the hardships that other countries have to face. And just having them realize, like, maybe, try researching a little bit, looking into the fact checking, seeing following our social media. We have a lot of mythbusters that we do because it's all about informing the public. And when someone understands more of the situation, then I really do feel like they'll understand why immigrants come here.
Right. What about the immigrants? What would you tell them?
I'll tell them to not be afraid, that they belong here, and that
and to do the right thing and apply for these temporary visas.
And to consult with an attorney, to see what you're eligible for, and that a lot of these immigrants are really good people, and that they've done a lot for the country behind the scenes. And people don't realize that. A lot of these immigrants are the people working construction, are the people working agriculture, the jobs that people don't normally want, right? And that are feeding the United States. So I don't want them to be afraid. I want them to be able to consult with an attorney and see how they can become legal. Right. And take away those fears that they have.
Because the ultimate goal is to make them legal.
Right. And couldn't there be some consideration also, and I don't know anything at all about the law, but, and it's too complicated. I'm glad you do. But so this would answer my own question. But honestly, I think most people feel, I know that gentleman felt like, yes, immigrants built the country, but they followed the legal process. And of course, there are a lot of people in line in that legal process that are not coming in illegally. But there are procedures like at the border. I mean, aren't there ways that a person could attempt to get that permission without coming in, without having followed some process? I mean, isn't there some way they could do that?
Yeah, there's different processes that they can do in order to come into the United States through residency. They'd have to have some family connection. So they would have to have like a spouse or a child over the age of 21 that was born in the U.S. To be able to petition for them to come to the United States, or through work visa. And that's a whole nother beast there. I only do deportation and family-based. Right. But work visas are another way. If they're petitioning for asylum, what they can do is go to the border and ask the asylum officer that they fear return to their country and ask for asylum that way as well.
No,
so there's different ways that they could do it.
No, that's wonderful. Michelle, thank you for taking a lot of time out of your Thanksgiving. I guess right now, since it is Thanksgiving in 2 days, I think we all need to be reminded that, I mean, we do live in a wonderful country. It's a great country, and we should be thankful for all the rights that we have and all the responsibilities that we have being Americans. And we also have to be thankful that there's people like you that are willing to fight when the fight needs to be fought, and so from my heart, and also I know from your clients, they're very thankful for for you and attorneys like yourself and your partner that are willing to do it. So thank you.
Thank you.
So
thank you,
before you hang up, why don't you tell our listeners again how they can get in touch with you if they have questions?
Yes. So you can call our offices, 571-583-0791, or you can visit one of our social medias or our website. Our website is Saavedra, SAAVEDRA, Perez, law.com, and we have our social media handlings, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube with the same handling, Saavedra Perez Law, and you can connect with us in any one of those ways.
Wonderful. Michelle, again, thank you very much. Get to your husband and
Happy
your in-laws
Thanksgiving.
and your beautiful girls. And we do appreciate you calling in and taking some time to talk to us about a very hot and informative topic. And important topic. So thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you guys too. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Thank you. We still do have time left. Lori and myself are here to answer any questions that you have regarding the law. And so if you have questions, give us a call at 727-441-3000. And just just like Craig who called. We appreciate that call. We appreciate as lawyers, we do have to acknowledge and address the other side of the argument.
Absolutely.
I mean, Lori, I think you became a lawyer because you enjoyed doing debate.
Absolutely. And one of the things we can look forward to, and I think Craig probably would appreciate this, is hopefully an environment where we can all feel much more comfortable expressing our personal viewpoints. That's what America is about.
That's
basically.
true. Yeah, no, I think it is important that you can have a discussion. The discussion doesn't have to turn into an argument.
No. Just to try to understand a little bit the perspective of everybody, and everybody can get their thoughts on the table, and then the process can go forward as it should.
And that's politics, and that's in life, but it's also in our practice.
Oh, yes.
We have to do that all the time with insurance companies.
Mm-hmm.
When our clients get injured in a crash, they have a perception of what our client is, and we have a different one.
Right. How many times over the years have we ended up representing a person whose job was insurance adjuster, who, when they were in that role, understandably, didn't really have much empathy for the person that was injured, and then, God forbid, they end up being injured in an automobile accident themselves.
Right.
And it changes your whole perspective.
I knew an Allstate adjuster who, she was the most difficult person to deal with 30 plus years ago. And all of a sudden she just disappeared. And we found out it's because she got in a crash and just couldn't do what she used to be able to do.
Yeah.
But really, that's our founder of our firm, Guy Perenich, used to be an insurance adjuster.
That's true.
And he decided, gosh, I'd rather help people than hurt people or help insurance companies instead. So that's why he started to become a personal injury attorney instead. So I think it is important, with Michelle and with Craig and with all our listeners, that it's important, especially now, that we have a discussion. We can even have a debate.
Right.
But it doesn't need to be an argument.
No.
A jury trial is in essence a debate side that will debate and argue with in terms of legal arguments.
Right.
But at the end, it's the jury who gets to decide.
Yes. They listen to the facts. They listen to the law. The judge instructs them, and then they make a decision. Sometimes that decision, maybe we'd look at it and we say, I think that was wrong. Sometimes we'll look at it and say, I think that was right. But it's the only process that's really a fair one that we have available to us. And it is, again, as I said earlier, there's no other place on the planet like the United States of America in terms of the rights that we have.
Amen.
And it can be frustrating on both sides of the fence. But I am so personally grateful. 45 years as a lawyer. I don't even know how that's possible.
Right.
It has fulfilled every thought and expectation I've had, not because I haven't been disappointed. Your idealism takes a lot of blows, but on balance, we still have the best system the world has ever put together.
We have a land of laws, and it's.
Thank you, founding fathers.
Yes, and it's important, that everyone follow the law. And when you don't follow the law, there's consequences. But there's also laws that protect you. Public defenders are a very good example, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I've never was a public defender. I was always doing personal injury. So
people have no idea that prior to the early 60s, a person could be accused of a crime and they would have no lawyer if they couldn't afford one.
Wow.
Well, that doesn't make much sense. You're guaranteed the right to counsel in the United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights. Didn't mean much if the person had no financial capability. So the public defender system was created out of that situation, out of the case of Gideon versus Wainwright, which happened in the panhandle of Florida. So there is a place for the development of protection of rights, and that has happened. That's a part of the recognition in the area of immigration, even with people that came across without following the proper rules. But that doesn't mean we can't all appreciate the reason for our rules and the importance of trying as a society to observe those rules.
And we want people to be passionate. It's important to be passionate, to be an American.
Right.
I wear my red, white, and blue probably more often than other people.
And we as lawyers, that's our job. We are advocates for our particular client. So that. So Michelle properly advocates for a person in the situation that she finds them, which would be an immigrant who perhaps doesn't have the proper documentation. When I was a public defender, a person was accused of a crime. They need a lawyer. It was my role to defend them. And even as I said, relatively conservative individual, I found that it was a tremendous role and very, very satisfying. Personal injury, if a person's injured in an automobile accident or some other type of injury as a result of negligence, they need help. And the lawyer's role is to be an advocate for that on behalf of their client, just as the insurance company has a right to hire a lawyer to advocate for their point of view.
And we see that with Social Security disability as well. I mean, I think we see that a lot. I mean, there's a stigma about people applying for Social Security disability, and
yet they paid into the system.
Yes.
I mean, if you get it, it's because your Social Security retirement, you get it early because you have a medical condition, a disability that prevents you from working out your days.
Right.
I think there's a lot of misconceptions, and it's easy to sort of kind of prejudge a situation without actually knowing the particulars, which doesn't mean there aren't abuses in all areas. There are. When there are people, there can be abuses.
That's exactly right. We only have a few more minutes left. So, Lori, since it is Thanksgiving, I do want to say I'm very thankful for you as my friend and as my law partner. You and I have been working together for
half of my career, probably.
Yeah. and we are thankful. I know I can speak for you that we're very thankful for our clients, for the trust that they have, for our firm, Perenich, Caulfield, Avril Noyes, the oldest personal injury law firm that gives us the framework to fight for what we have to fight. My family, of course.
Yes, right. No, it's
your fur babies.
Yes, and my family as well. No, it's right. It's just I feel very grateful every day. Actually, I mean, I'm so grateful to be able to do something that I love doing, which is representing people. We're very, very blessed to be able to do that, and in an environment like we have that has such a foundation that Guy Perenich, God bless him, established, along with Bob Carroll coming along afterwards.
We can't forget Bob.
No, no, we don't want. No. And the other partners, obviously, they're still there. I mean, we've had a lot of longevity because of such a really solid foundation. Right,
and so we are wrapping up this episode, but next month, Jacqueline Bryant will be the host of our Tuesday show. And she will have a month full of Tuesdays.
Yes.
I think Lori will probably pop on once or twice. And she'll have also many other wonderful guests that can share information and be available to answer questions that you have. But it's not just on Tuesday at 5 to 6 o'clock that we're available for you. We are, here in the community, willing to help you. At any time. You can call us at 727-796-8282, or you can even visit our website at voiceoftheinjured.com or usalaw.com. Lori and I often talk to people that just have questions that need to be answered, and we don't even take their case. It's just they had a question that need to answer, and that's what we take pride in. And so we're always happy to be there for you if you have questions. Again, we're Perenich, Caulfield, Avril Noyes, USA Law, or voiceoftheinjured.com. Lori, thank you very much for another interesting and informative episode.
Always happy to be here.
Happy Thanksgiving to you. Happy Thanksgiving to all our listeners. And as I always say, drive safely and watch out for those who don't. Take care. Good night.